Commander Sarah Jensen's boots clicked against the gray concrete as she stepped off the transport vehicle onto the sprawling naval training facility in Virginia. The early morning fog hung low over the grounds, curling around the towering communication towers and the rows of reinforced bunkers. She adjusted her jacket, feeling the chill in the air seep through the fabric. The wind carried the faint metallic scent of machinery and sea salt from the nearby coast. This wasn't just any assignment. It was a high-stakes marksmanship evaluation. That could define her standing in the fleet, and she knew every officer present would be watching her closely. Sarah had earned her reputation in the field through precision, focus, and a no-nonsense approach. She had faced hostile fire zones, led strategic missions, and trained under some of the toughest instructors in the country. Today's test, however, was different. It wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about demonstrating control under observation, discipline in the face of intimidation, and composure when challenged. Rumors had preceded her arrival. Admiral Hawthorne, the officer, overseeing the exercise, had a reputation for being ruthless, overbearing, and merciless in his evaluations. Those who had crossed him or even disappointed him found their careers stalled, sometimes permanently. The other officers moved around the range with a mix of purpose and apprehension. Uniforms crisp, rifles slung over shoulders, they were the best of the best, yet even they seemed tense in Hawthorne's presence. Some whispered among themselves as Sarah passed, noting the quiet intensity in her eyes. She gave them a small nod, but didn't stop. Her focus was on the rifle waiting for her at the far end of the range, a Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle, one of the most formidable firearms in the fleet's arsenal. The rifle wasn't merely a weapon. It was an extension of the operator's skill, strength, and precision. Handling it required not only training, but absolute calm and mental clarity. Sarah's hand brushed the cold metal of the rifle as she approached. Its weight was familiar, comforting even, a reminder of the hours she had spent practicing in isolation, under simulated pressure, perfecting every detail of her stance, grip, and aim. She closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself, breathing. And slowly, she could almost hear the echo of every past drill, every marksmanship test, every lesson in discipline. Her mind cleared of distraction. Only the target, only the rifle, only precision mattered. The first hint of tension came as the Nissan's sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the range. A low rumble of an approaching vehicle announced Admiral Hawthorne's arrival. Sarah felt the hairs on her arms rise. She had read about the man in training manuals and anecdotes, but seeing him in person was different. He carried an aura of command that demanded attention. His dark uniform was immaculate, adorned with ribbons and medals that caught the sunlight. He moved with deliberate authority, each step measured, every motion precise. "Commander Jensen," he called as he approached, his voice cutting through the murmur of officers like a steel blade. "I hope you understand the importance of today's exercise. Precision isn't optional. Control isn't optional. You will be observed at every moment." His eyes, sharp and calculating, held her gaze. There was no warmth there, only scrutiny. Sarah nodded respectfully, masking the storm of focus building inside her. She knew better than to show doubt. The Admiral's presence had a strange effect on the other officers. Some straightened instinctively, hands tightening around rifles, while others shuffled slightly, adjusting their positions. Sarah noticed it all, cataloging reactions and using them to strengthen her own composure. This wasn't about ego, it was about observation, anticipation, and readiness. Any hesitation, any misstep, and the consequences could ripple through their careers. Hawthorne's gaze lingered on her rifle. "Barrett .50 caliber," he said slowly, almost like tasting the words. "Few can handle this weapon properly. Fewer can do it under scrutiny. You understand what's at stake. Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't flinch. Her experience in hostile situations had trained her for moments of life-and-death pressure. Yet she realized this test would challenge something different: mental fortitude, resilience, and calm under the weight of personal judgment. As the Admiral walked around her, examining the stance, her grip, and the alignment of the rifle, Sarah reminded herself of the countless drills she had performed in preparation. Every ounce of her training, shoulder strength, trigger discipline, breath control would be put to the ultimate test. She adjusted her posture slightly, ensuring her body was a perfect frame for the rifle. Every detail mattered. She could not afford a single misalignment. Off to the side, junior officers whispered, clearly amazed by the intensity emanating from both the commander and the Admiral. Some attempted to make sense of the tension, but Sarah paid them no mind. Focus demanded isolation. Every movement she would make, every calculation she would perform, had to be flawless. This was more than a test of marksmanship. It was a test of authority, of composure, and of mental strength. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint whiff of salt and heave, a distant roar of the ocean against the cliffs. Sarah inhaled slowly, centering herself further. In her mind, she ran through the target sequence, environmental conditions, and adjustments she would make. She visualized the recoil, the trajectory, the moment the bullet would strike each target. Mental rehearsal was as crucial as physical. Readiness. She knew the rifle's immense power could betray inexperience. She would not allow it. Then, a sudden sharp sound echoed, the closing of the range gate, and the final signal of the start. Sarah gripped the Barrett tightly, feeling the familiar weight settle into her hands. She could feel the adrenaline prickling under her skin, but it was disciplined, controlled. Her eyes scanned the distance, adjusting instinctively for light, shadow, and wind. Today wasn't about proving something to the Admiral or to the watching officers. It was about proving it to herself, that her training, focus, and skill were absolute. Admiral Hawthorne finally spoke, his voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "Show me what you've got, Commander. Do not waste my time." Sarah's pulse remained steady, her focus unbroken. Every fiber of her being aligned for a single purpose: perfect execution. The air seemed to hold its breath, officers frozen in anticipation, the distant targets waiting silently. In that moment, Sarah Jensen wasn't just a commander. She was a master of her craft, ready to face not just the weapon, but the challenge, the scrutiny, and the pressure. And she knew, deep in her core, that today would test more than her skill with a rifle. It would test her composure, her courage, and her ability to remain unshakable when faced with provocation. The stage was set, the tension palpable, and the story of her extraordinary performance was about to begin. The Admiral's steps were heavy and deliberate as he approached the firing line. Every officer present seemed to stiffen, a reflex born of respect and fear. Commander Sarah Jensen held her stance, gripping the Barrett .50 caliber rifle with controlled authority. She was calm, measured, but internally, her mind was racing with anticipation. Hawthorne's reputation had reached every corner of the fleet, a man who expected perfection and tolerated nothing less. Today, she would be measured not only by her marksmanship, but by her ability to maintain composure under intense scrutiny. He stopped just a few feet in front of her, his dark eyes scanning every angle, every adjustment she had made to her stance. "Commander Jensen," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "I trust you know what is required here. This rifle is no toy. It demands respect. Handling it improperly is disastrous." He let the word hang, sharp and deliberate, like a warning. Sarah nodded subtly, a signal of acknowledgement, though she did not speak. Words were unnecessary. Her focus was absolute. She could feel the faint tremor in the air as junior officers shifted nervously, glancing at one another. Many had watched Hawthorne push trainees to their limits before, and even seasoned officers could feel a cold sweat under his gaze. The Admiral circled the commander slowly, examining her grip, stance, and the alignment of her eye with the scope. His eyes flicked from the target line to her posture, cataloging every detail. "Few can handle the Barrett under observation," he said, almost conversationally, though the undercurrent was menace. "Many falter, even the trained. I hope you are not one of them." Sarah's mind did not waver. She understood the subtle challenge hidden in his words. This was more than a test of skill. It was a psychological probe designed to shake confidence. She tightened her grip slightly on the rifle, feeling its familiar weight settle firmly against her shoulder. Every adjustment in her stance was deliberate. This wasn't just preparation. It was mental warfare. A breeze shifted across the range, brushing against the towering metal framework that held the distant targets. Sarah observed the flags, noting the slight sway. Even small environmental details could affect trajectory in long-range shots with a .50 caliber rifle. Every variable mattered, and she absorbed them like a machine calculating data in real time. Hawthorne stopped in front of her once more, now close enough for her to feel the faint vibration of his presence. He extended his hand toward the rifle. "Allow me," he said, with a tone that suggested superiority. "I'll demonstrate proper handling. Watch and learn." His hand moved to adjust her grip. Sarah's jaw tightened. She could feel the tension build, not just in herself, but radiating outward to every officer observing the scene. For a fraction of a second, time seemed suspended. The rifles, targets, and shadows all became secondary to the silent standoff. Sarah's focus sharpened. She had faced direct enemy fire, chaotic ambushes, and life-or-death decisions in war zones. Yet this was a different challenge. It was about mastering the mind under observation, not just the mechanics of the rifle. The Admiral's hand brushed hers as he reached for the weapon. His grip was firm, practiced, confident. He leaned slightly, demonstrating recoil management, adjusting the rifle with a flourish that implied dominance. Sarah felt a surge of irritation, but she did not move hastily. Patience, control, and timing were crucial. Any reaction she made now would reveal either confidence or vulnerability. She observed his technique, noting minor imperfections. His stance was textbook, yes, but not flawless. There was a slight tilt in his shoulder, a subtle imbalance she had seen corrected in her own training. Sarah knew she could outmatch him in accuracy if she reclaimed control at the precise moment. The moment arrived almost imperceptibly. As he shifted the rifle slightly, she reacted with instinctive precision. In one fluid motion, Sarah twisted her wrist and elbow, reclaiming the Barrett with expert control. The rifle's metal clanged softly as it returned to her grasp, and the range seemed to exhale collectively. Gasps and murmurs spread among the observing officers. Sarah's composure remained intact, her eyes unflinching. The tension between her and the Admiral crackled like an electrical current. Hawthorne's dark eyes narrowed, betraying the faintest flicker of surprise. He straightened, regaining composure, yet his gaze now held a mixture of respect and challenge. "Impressive," he said carefully. "I did not expect you to react so quickly. But the exercise has only begun." Sarah allowed herself a minimal exhale, acknowledging that the first psychological test had passed. The real challenge target engagement was about to begin. She adjusted her scope, aligning it with the first distant target. Her breathing slowed methodically, each inhale and exhale calculated to steady her aim. The weight of the rifle settled perfectly into her shoulder, almost as if it were an extension of her own body. Years of rigorous training had led to this moment, total unity between operator and weapon. The Admiral stepped aside slightly, observing without interference. The other officers leaned forward, captivated by the sudden shift in dynamics. The quiet authority in Sarah's stance contrasted sharply with the previous tension. It was clear she had turned the psychological confrontation in her favor. She wasn't merely reacting. She was commanding the scene through focus, confidence, and undeniable skill. Sarah's eyes scanned the target line. She calculated distance, wind, and the slight incline of the terrain. Every detail mattered. Even the faint vibration of the concrete beneath her boots could influence the shot. She adjusted her breathing rhythmically, letting focus sharpen her vision and calm her mind. This was preparation, control, and anticipation distilled into a single, precise moment. The range seemed to contract around her, the world narrowing. To barrel, target, and the subtle whisper of the wind. For a fleeting instant, everything else disappeared. The Admiral's presence, the whispers of observers, even the distant roar of the ocean. It was a meditative clarity only experienced by those trained to function under extreme pressure. Then the first target appeared, distant and almost fragile against the horizon. Sarah's eyes tracked it, her hands steady. The rifle recoiled slightly under her practiced grip, yet she absorbed it effortlessly. Every previous exercise, every correction, every drill trained for this precise moment. The first shot wasn't just about hitting the target. It was about establishing control, demonstrating mastery, and proving that intimidation could not undermine skill. The tension was electric. The officers around her leaned slightly forward, captivated by the unfolding display of calm precision. The Admiral's lips pressed into a thin line. Even his composed demeanor could not mask the growing recognition that Sarah Jensen was not just skilled. She was extraordinary under pressure. Every second stretched, anticipation building toward the first decisive shot. Sarah's finger hovered gently on the trigger, the barrel aligned perfectly. She inhaled slowly, the world narrowing to scope, target, and calculation. This moment would set the tone for the rest of the exercise. It would demonstrate not only technical expertise, but mental fortitude, poise under provocation, and the rare ability to reclaim authority when challenged. The stage was set. Commander Sarah Jensen, standing firm in the misty dawn, gripping the formidable Barrett .50 caliber rifle, was about to transform tension into mastery. Every officer watching would remember this confrontation not for the presence of the Admiral, but for the unwavering precision, calm, and command radiating from her. The challenge had begun, and she was ready. The wind picked up, carrying faint echoes of the ocean, crashing against distant cliffs. Commander Sarah Jensen's fingers tightened around the cold metal of the Barrett .50 caliber rifle. Her eyes scanned the range, trained on the distant targets. Yet she couldn't ignore the presence of Admiral Hawthorne. He moved with deliberate confidence, a predator assessing its prey. Sarah had anticipated a challenge, but she hadn't expected him to act so boldly. With a swift, practiced motion, he reached toward her rifle. "This isn't a drill," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "Watch closely. Observe the correct technique." Before she could react, his hands closed around the rifle, lifting it from her grasp. The weight of the .50 cal was formidable in his grip, a physical reminder of its destructive power. Sarah felt the familiar tension of recoil shifting through her arms, the subtle vibration of the barrel's mass-resisting movement. Yet even as he maneuvered the rifle, she noticed flaws in his technique, tilt in the stock, a slight misalignment in his stance. Most officers might have hesitated, overwhelmed by the sudden seizure. But Sarah didn't. She calculated. She observed. She waited. Her mind raced through potential responses, each one analyzed for risk and timing. Years of experience in hostile environments had trained her for sudden confrontations, but this was different. There was no life or death immediacy, no enemy fire forcing rapid decisions. This was psychological a test of composure, reaction speed, and dominance under scrutiny. Hawthorne's smirk betrayed a confidence in his perceived superiority. He believed the rifle and the situation belonged entirely to him. Sarah's eyes narrowed, calculating the precise moment to act. Her body moved in synchronization with instinct honed over years. In one fluid, nearly imperceptible motion, she shifted her weight slightly, rotating her wrist and elbow in a controlled arc. The rifle clanged softly as it returned to her hands. Every officer present instinctively leaned forward, some audibly gasping. The sound of the rifle being reclaimed echoed across the range, a metallic punctuation in the tense silence. Admiral Hawthorne froze, his eyes widening for a split second. His dark gaze locked onto Sarah's, now laced with unmistakable recognition. She was no ordinary officer, and he had underestimated her. For the briefest moment, the atmosphere around them shifted. The observers, officers trained to notice tension, felt it immediately. This was no longer a training exercise. It was a battle of mastery, control, and mental fortitude. Sarah's hands settled on the rifle with perfect control. Her stance adjusted subtly, knees slightly bent, feet planted firmly. She exuded calm, authority, the result of both experience and focus. Every muscle was poised for precision, every breath measured. She didn't recoil from the confrontation, she integrated it. Her mind cleared entirely of distraction. The rifle was an extension of herself now, as it should have been from the start. The Admiral stepped back slightly, regaining composure, though the faintest crease appeared between his brows. "Well," he said finally, voice measured but tight, "you've proven quick reflexes. But precision isn't reflex, it's discipline." His tone carried both challenge and acknowledgement. Sarah didn't respond verbally. There was no need. Her posture, her calm, and the unwavering grip on the weapon said more than words ever could. She focused again on the targets. The first one, a distant steel plate, appeared almost fragile against the horizon. Every detail mattered. Distance, wind, subtle sway in the platform, even the faint vibration of the concrete beneath her boots. She calculated the trajectory almost instinctively, adjusting for environmental factors. The weapon, heavy and unforgiving, responded to her command as if alive, translating her control into deadly precision. Admiral Hawthorne moved to the side, observing quietly. He no longer attempted interference. The other officers, who moments ago had been tense with anticipation, now watched in awe. The shift was unmistakable. Sarah had reclaimed not only the weapon, but authority in the moment. She demonstrated that intimidation could be neutralized through calm, precise action, and that skill could outweigh seniority when executed flawlessly. For a heartbeat, everything seemed suspended. The wind whispered through the range, flags fluttering on distant posts, shadows shifting across the concrete. Then Sarah aligned her first shot. Fingers steady, shoulder firm, scope adjusted perfectly. She exhaled slowly. The rifle's recoil was absorbed seamlessly, the bullet hitting the target dead center. A soft metallic clang echoed, signaling perfection. Murmurs spread among the officers. Some faces were pale with disbelief. Others had eyes wide with admiration. Even the Admiral's expression betrayed a grudging respect. Sarah didn't allow herself a moment of satisfaction. There were 8 more targets to hit, and each demanded identical precision. She adjusted her stance slightly, analyzing the next target, calculating environmental conditions in real time. Every subsequent shot required even more focus. Each recoil had to be absorbed, wind shifts compensated for, minor vibrations corrected. Sarah's mind operated in a heightened state of awareness, every movement synchronized with calculated intent. The officers whispered softly among themselves. None had ever seen someone handle the Barrett .50 cal with such composure under direct scrutiny. The Admiral finally spoke again, his tone subdued but authoritative. "Commander Jensen," he said, "carefully, you're extraordinary. Few would react as you did. Even fewer would execute with this level of control." His voice was quiet, yet the weight of acknowledgement was unmistakable. Sarah's eyes remained on the targets, but a flicker of recognition crossed her mind. The confrontation had shifted. Respect had begun to replace challenge. The observation wasn't over. Sarah knew the Admiral was still analyzing every aspect of her execution. Every subtle movement, every adjustment in her aim, and every controlled exhale would be noted, mentally logged, and referenced in evaluations. Yet even under this intense scrutiny, Sarah maintained her calm. This was her strength, the ability to integrate pressure, conflict, and observation into performance rather than distraction. She lined up the next target. The weight of the rifle was familiar, comforting even, and the environment a distant. Steel plate, shifting flags, subtle wind was accounted for mentally. The bullet left the barrel with a controlled crack, striking the target with unerring accuracy. Another small metallic ping echoed across the range, signaling another perfect hit. The officers whispered among themselves again. This was more than marksmanship. It was mastery under pressure. The Admiral's eyes, once intimidating, now conveyed measured respect. He recognized a rare combination, technical skill married with composure under provocation. He had attempted to assert dominance, to test authority, but Sarah had reclaimed control effortlessly, demonstrating that true mastery could not be undermined by intimidation alone. Sarah paused only for a moment before engaging the next target. She adjusted for slight differences in distance, compensating for the subtle sway of the steel target platform. Each shot reinforced the lesson. Focus and precision were more powerful than fear and authority. The range had become a stage for proving not only technical skill, but psychological resilience. With each target, Sarah's confidence deepened. She was no longer reacting, she was commanding. The rifle obeyed her as if an extension of her own will. Every movement was deliberate, precise, and fluid. A confrontation with the Admiral had shifted from a challenge to a demonstration, a lesson for all who observed that mastery under pressure was the ultimate form of authority. By the time she prepared for the final target in this sequence, Sarah had transformed tension into performance. The air was electric with anticipation. Every officer knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, the reclaiming of a weapon, the neutralization of intimidation, and the flawless execution of marksmanship under the watchful eye of one of the fleet's most formidable officers. The metallic clang of the Barrett .50 caliber rifle, settling back into Commander Sarah Jensen's hands, reverberated through the range, cutting through the tense morning air. For a heartbeat, the entire facility seemed frozen, every officer and subordinate holding their breath. Even the distant crashing waves of the ocean were muted beneath the electric silence. Sarah's eyes never wavered from the target's downrange. Every fiber of her being was aligned to stance, grip, breath, focus perfectly tuned to execute the impossible. Reclaim authority, neutralize intimidation, and transform tension into flawless action. Admiral Hawthorne, momentarily stunned by her swift reclamation, straightened with barely concealed surprise. His smirk faded into a thin line of curiosity and caution. He had expected hesitation, resistance, perhaps even failure, but not mastery. Executed with such precision, under immediate pressure. He studied her movements with a calculated scrutiny, noting her posture, the firm yet relaxed grip on the rifle, and the subtle adjustments she made to absorb its massive recoil. Sarah had turned his test into a demonstration of unshakable authority. The wind gusted across the range, rustling flags on the distant target platforms. Sarah observed every subtle movement, the sway of the metal plates, the slight shift of dust on the ground, even the faint vibrations in the concrete beneath her boots. Every detail mattered, and every variable would influence her shots. Years of disciplined training surged through her muscles, integrating instinct with calculation. She was a perfect blend of human precision and tactical expertise. Her first target stood at the far end of the range, small and unforgiving. Sarah adjusted the rifle slightly, inhaled deliberately, and exhaled slowly. Her finger pressed the trigger with fluid control, the recoil absorbed by an almost imperceptible adjustment of her stance. The bullet struck true, sending a metallic echo through the air as the plate shattered perfectly. A ripple of astonishment passed through the observing officers. Even the Admiral's eyes betrayed a flicker of respect. Sarah did not allow herself a moment of satisfaction. There were 8 more targets to engage, each demanding the same absolute precision. Her breathing remained methodical, each inhale and exhale synchronized with the rhythm of her focus. Every adjustment, shoulder alignment, trigger pressure, eye on the scope, was executed with near mechanical efficiency. The rifle's massive power was harnessed fully under her control. She had reclaimed both weapon and authority, and now it was time to demonstrate mastery fully. Officers leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding performance. Whispers spread like wildfire, none daring to break the tense silence entirely, but all aware they were witnessing something extraordinary. Sarah's control, calm, and precision radiated outward. She was no longer merely defending her competence. She was commanding the environment. The range had become a stage, and her actions were lessons in resilience, focus, and tactical mastery. Hawthorne's presence, once oppressive, now seemed almost secondary. He remained vigilant, of course, observing every movement, but Sarah had neutralized the intimidation factor. She understood that the confrontation wasn't personal. It was a test of skill and composure, a challenge designed to provoke mistakes. By reacting with speed, precision, and composure, she had seized control of the psychological battlefield. The other officers could sense the shift immediately. Sarah's eyes swept the next target, a slightly smaller steel plate set against a backdrop of distant hills. The wind had shifted marginally, requiring a minute adjustment to trajectory. Her mind calculated every factor instantaneously: bullet drop, wind velocity, recoil absorption, and sight alignment. She adjusted her stance and breathing. The rifle felt like a natural extension of her body, responding seamlessly to her commands. With a deliberate, controlled squeeze of the trigger, the next plate shattered, the echo of destruction resonating through the early morning air. Each shot increased the energy on the range, the tension transforming into awe. Officers whispered softly, admiration tempered with disbelief. They had never witnessed a weapon of such destructive capability wielded with this level of precision. Under direct psychological pressure, Hawthorne's dark eyes remained fixed on her, analyzing, yet his posture suggested grudging acknowledgement. Sarah did not react to his gaze. She did not need to. Her performance was self-sufficient proof of her mastery in its purest form. The next few targets emerged one by one, their placement designed to test long-range accuracy, line-of-sight adjustments, and environmental adaptations. Sarah's focus remained absolute. Every adjustment of her scope, every subtle lean, every shift in grip was deliberate. She accounted for micro-vibrations in the concrete, the gusts of wind, the slight tilt of the target supports. Each shot echoed metallically, leaving no doubt in the minds of those observing. This was precision executed flawlessly, under extraordinary pressure. By the time she engaged the 5th target, The energy of the range had shifted entirely. The whispers among officers transformed into murmured admiration, the initial tension replaced by respect. Hawthorne's expression was unreadable, though the faintest crease between his brows suggested he was cataloging her technique with uncharacteristic interest. Sarah felt no need for approval. Her focus was entirely on the targets, on the rifle, on the rhythm of mastery she had established. The 6th and 7th shots were executed with the same effortless precision. Sarah's breathing remained controlled, a slow cadence that harmonized with the timing of her movements. Even subtle distractions, a snapping branch, the distant call of a gull, the murmur of observers, were absorbed without affecting performance. She had converted the range into a controlled environment, her mind filtering irrelevant stimuli and focusing exclusively on what mattered. Finally, the 8th target appeared, slightly elevated and partially shielded by environmental cover. Many officers would have struggled with line of sight, adjustments, and wind. Sarah's mind moved in sync with the rifle, calculating trajectory and compensating for every variable. With one perfectly controlled squeeze of the trigger, the target shattered. The echo reverberated through the facility, a sound of triumph, precision, and mastery. Every officer recognized that she had achieved perfection, even under immense psychological pressure. Hawthorne finally exhaled audibly, a subtle acknowledgement of skill that contrasted sharply with his earlier dominance. "Impressive," he said quietly, almost reluctantly. His voice carried weight, recognition, and a hint of admiration. Sarah lowered the rifle, her expression calm, her posture steady. She did not celebrate. There was no need. Her performance spoke louder than words. She had neutralized intimidation, reclaimed control, and executed mastery under extreme observation. The observer's eyes followed her movements as she repositioned slightly, preparing for the final shot. The 9th target, placed at a challenging angle and distance, was designed to test endurance, precision, and focus after repeated exertion. Sarah's hands adjusted slightly, shoulder absorbing the rifle's weight effortlessly. Her breathing synchronized with the subtle sway of the target, the faint wind, and the alignment of her scope. She exhaled slowly, and the trigger broke. The 9th bullet struck true. Perfect. A metallic clang resonated across the range, echoing like a drumbeat of victory. Officers whispered, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding in quiet admiration. Even Hawthorne's eyes softened subtly, betraying an acknowledgement that she had surpassed expectations. Sarah's calm remained unbroken, her composure absolute. She had transformed a tense confrontation into a flawless performance, demonstrating skill, focus, and resilience in a single commanding display. As she lowered the Barrett completely, the energy on the range shifted. The tension that had dominated the morning dissolved into a quiet respect. Officers exchanged glances, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. Hawthorne stepped forward slowly, measuring each word. "Commander Jensen," he said, voice measured, "your precision, control, and composure are exemplary. Few could have executed this under pressure, and fewer still with the professionalism you displayed." Sarah's expression remained calm, almost neutral. Inside, however, she allowed herself a fleeting sense of accomplishment. The challenge had been more than marksmanship. It had been a test of patience, control, and dominance in the face of intimidation. She had met it flawlessly. The lesson was clear to every observer. Mastery, discipline, and focus could overcome even the most formidable psychological tests. The day's exercise had concluded, yet the impression lingered. Officers would recount this performance for years. Sarah's reputation had grown immeasurably, not through bravado, but through undeniable competence. She had reclaimed authority, neutralized intimidation, and executed perfection under pressure. And as she walked from the range, the weight of the Barrett .50 cal resting comfortably against her shoulder. She knew that she had left an indelible mark on every officer present, and even on Admiral Hawthorne himself. The morning sun had risen fully now, casting long, sharp shadows across the naval training range. Commander Sarah Jensen stood poised, the Barrett .50 caliber rifle steady against her shoulder, every muscle coiled like a spring. The tension from the previous confrontation with Admiral Hawthorne had not dissipated. It had transformed into a sharp, focused energy that surged through her body. The first target loomed in the distance, a small steel plate mounted on a platform several hundred meters away. It seemed almost delicate against the vast expanse of the range, yet Sarah knew better. A miscalculation of even a fraction of an inch could ruin everything. She scanned the range carefully, her eyes sweeping over every subtle detail. Flags flapped lightly in the wind, signaling shifts she had to account for. Dust and grit swirled faintly on the concrete floor, evidence of subtle vibrations from machinery and distant footsteps. Even the sun's angle mattered, its glare potentially distracting her vision as she aligned her scope. Every environmental factor, no matter how small, was critical. Sarah's mind catalogued, calculated, and compensated for each variable in an almost mechanical precision honed over years of rigorous training. The observers stood in tense silence, officers and subordinates frozen in anticipation. Many had witnessed Sarah reclaim the rifle from Admiral Hawthorne's grip earlier, but now they were about to see her translate that mastery into action. Some leaned forward slightly, unconsciously holding their breath as if afraid to disturb the electric focus radiating from the commander. Others whispered in awe to those beside them, recognizing the rare blend of composure, skill, and tactical awareness that few ever possessed. Sarah adjusted her stance slightly, planting her feet firmly on the concrete, knees flexed just enough to absorb recoil. Her shoulder was perfectly aligned with the stock, and her hands gripped the rifle with a balance of strength and finesse. She exhaled slowly, centering herself, each breath a metronome syncing mind and body for the moment ahead. The first shot would set the tone. It was more than a technical demonstration. It was a declaration of focus, mastery, and control under scrutiny. The Admiral's eyes followed her every movement, his arms folded, his expression unreadable. He observed not only her technical execution, but also her psychological composure. Hawthorne had challenged many officers over the years, but few had handled his intimidation with such poise and immediate dominance. Sarah's calm now was a statement in itself. The first bullet would either confirm her supremacy or reveal flaw, and every observer knew it. Sarah raised the rifle, aligning the scope with the target. She adjusted for wind, distance, and even minor environmental shifts she had noted over the previous minutes. Her finger hovered over the trigger, steady as a surgeon's hand. The weight of the rifle was familiar, almost comforting. Years of rigorous training and countless hours on the range had taught her how to absorb its massive recoil and transform it into precise, repeatable control. The range seemed to contract around her, the world narrowing to scope, target, and the subtle, imperceptible vibrations that could influence trajectory. Time stretched. The distant ocean's roar, the faint creak of metal supports, even the whispers of fellow officers all faded into the background. Nothing existed except the barrel, the target, and the controlled rhythm of her breathing. Sarah exhaled fully, letting her body settle into the shot. She pressed the trigger slowly, deliberately. The rifle cracked, the recoil absorbed seamlessly by her posture. The bullet struck the target dead center, sending a metallic ping echoing across the range. The steel plate shattered, fragments scattering slightly as officers gasped softly. The sound carried a tangible sense of mastery. Every observer could feel it. Even Hawthorne's gaze shifted subtly, a flicker of acknowledgement passing through his eyes. She allowed herself no pause. The first shot had set the benchmark, but there were still 8 more targets to engage. Sarah recalibrated immediately, checking wind shifts, platform alignment, and minor environmental changes. Each subsequent shot required the same exacting precision. Any lapse in focus could compromise not only accuracy, but also the psychological advantage she had gained over both the Admiral and the watching officers. The second target appeared, slightly angled and farther than the first. Sarah adjusted her scope quickly, compensating for the new trajectory and minor gusts of wind. She exhaled slowly, her finger pressing the trigger with unwavering control. Another metallic ping echoed as the bullet struck perfectly. Observers whispered softly, awe evident in their tones. Hawthorne's arms remained folded, yet the faint crease in his brow betrayed his continued analysis. Sarah had neutralized intimidation and was now demonstrating her skill in pure, undeniable form. The third target, positioned higher and partially obscured by a metal framework, challenged her line of sight. Most officers would have taken longer to calculate adjustments. Sarah, however, executed instinctively. Her scope adjusted, stance shifted subtly, and every micro-movement calculated. The bullet left the barrel with a perfect trajectory, shattering the target cleanly. Gasps and soft murmurs spread among the onlookers. Even those with extensive marksmanship experience seemed almost unable to comprehend her level of precision. By the time she engaged the fourth and fifth targets, the range had transformed into a theater of awe. Every adjustment, every shot, reinforced her dominance in skill and composure. Observers leaned forward in disbelief, recognizing the rare ability to maintain absolute control under both psychological pressure and technical challenge. The previous confrontation with the Admiral had been only a prelude. Now, every shot reaffirmed her mastery. Sarah's breathing remained synchronized with her movements, a rhythm that harmonized mind, body, and rifle. Even minor disturbances, the sway of flags, dust shifting from slight vibrations, or distant footsteps, were absorbed without affecting execution. She had converted the environment into a controlled domain, every factor accounted for in real-time calculations. The rifle felt like an extension of her own body, responding seamlessly to her commands. The sixth target required a subtle adjustment for wind and elevation. Sarah exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing slightly as she aligned the scope. The shot left the barrel, striking true. A metallic echo rang across the range, a testament to her skill and calm under pressure. The seventh shot followed almost immediately, executed with the same flawless precision. Observers murmured in awe, the whispers now carrying tones of admiration and disbelief. The eighth target, set at a difficult distance with partial cover, demanded acute concentration. Sarah's mind calculated trajectory, wind velocity, and line of sight simultaneously. Her stance absorbed the massive recoil effortlessly. As the shot rang true, the target shattering with a clean, metallic ping. Even the Admiral's previously unreadable expression betrayed subtle respect. Sarah had transformed tension into performance, intimidation into demonstration, and observation into testament. Finally, the ninth target emerged, distant and challenging, elevated slightly above the previous platforms. Sarah adjusted her scope, calculated every microfactor, and exhaled slowly. The bullet left the barrel in perfect alignment, striking true with finality. The metallic ping echoed triumphantly, reverberating across the facility. Officers whispered in disbelief, and even Hawthorne's posture softened, acknowledging the extraordinary feat before him. Sarah lowered the rifle, calm and composed. Every shot had been executed flawlessly, each target engaged with precision, control, and mastery. The demonstration was complete. She had neutralized psychological pressure, reclaimed authority, and displayed technical skill beyond expectation. The exercise had begun as a test, but had evolved into a demonstration of excellence under extraordinary conditions. Every officer present would remember this display for years, a lesson in discipline, composure, and mastery. The steel plates lay in ruins across the distant range, each shattered by the precise force of Commander Sarah Jensen's hand. The faint metallic echoes reverberated across the facility, leaving a charged silence in their wake. Even the subtle hum of wind and the distant crashing of ocean waves seemed to fade as all eyes focused on her. Every officer present understood they had just witnessed the culmination of years of training, executed with flawless precision. And even the most seasoned among them felt a shiver of awe. Sarah remained poised, her stance firm, her grip on the Monday. Barrett .50 caliber rifle unwavering. She allowed herself no outward show of satisfaction. Precision, discipline, and control had to be maintained to very end. One misstep, one lapse in focus, and the entire performance could have been compromised. The challenge of this exercise had never been simply to fire the weapon accurately. It had been to demonstrate mastery under observation, composure under pressure, and the ability to neutralize intimidation while executing flawless marksmanship. Hawthorne, who had attempted to assert authority moments earlier by seizing the rifle, now stood silently, arms folded, analyzing every micro-movement Sarah made. There was no outward concession, no expression of admiration, yet subtle indicators betrayed a grudging respect. The crease between his brows had softened slightly, and his eyes lingered on her hands, posture, and alignment. Sarah had taken a direct challenge, and by her calm, decisive action, transformed it into an unambiguous demonstration of superiority and skill. The officers surrounding the range were equally captivated. Whispers had begun to circulate, soft but charged with admiration. Some whispered about her calm under pressure, others about the seeming impossibility of her accuracy. Few had ever seen the Barrett wielded with such fluidity and command. Every shot had been calculated, every recoil absorbed seamlessly. The sequence of 9 targets, each more challenging than the last, had been executed flawlessly, and the audience could feel the rhythm of mastery radiating outward. Sarah's breathing was slow, deliberate, and synchronized with each micro-movement, required to prepare for the next shot. The massive rifle, a weapon notorious for its recoil and unforgiving weight, felt like an extension of her own body. Her mind integrated instinct with calculation, every adjustment measured and precise. Even subtle shifts in wind, minor vibrations in the ground, or the sway of the target platforms were accounted for in real time. The rifle responded obediently, translating her mental calculation into mechanical perfection. The 6th target, recently engaged, had required adjustments for elevation and lateral sway. Sarah had made them seamlessly, her fingers light but firm on the trigger, absorbing recoil without hesitation. The metallic ping resonated, signaling success. The 7th target, partially obscured behind structural supports, had been no less challenging. Observers leaned forward instinctively, recognizing the complexity of her calculation and the precision with which it was executed. Murmurs of admiration, barely audible, rippled through the crowd. Sarah's focus remained absolute. The 8th target, set at an unusual angle, demanded near instantaneous calculation of trajectory, wind compensation, and subtle recoil adjustment. Her fingers squeezed the trigger at the exact moment her mind had calculated, and the bullet struck dead center. The steel plate shattered perfectly. Even those closest to her could sense the extraordinary harmony between thought, body, and weapon. There was a rhythm to her performance, a synchronicity that transcended ordinary marksmanship. Hawthorne's eyes remained fixed, analytical, and deliberate. His attempt to intimidate earlier had been nullified by Sarah's composure and decisiveness. Even now, he catalogued each adjustment she made, noting how quickly she adapted to environmental factors and the rhythm of the rifle's powerful recoil. Sarah had turned the confrontation into a demonstration of authority without confrontation, a rare feat in any military context. The observers recognized it instantly. She had not just fired the rifle. She had commanded it. The ninth and final target loomed in the distance, more elevated and angled than any prior plate. Its challenge was obvious. Distance, line of sight complications, and wind variations made accuracy difficult even for a seasoned sniper. Sarah adjusted her scope, her body moving fluidly to account for recoil and balance. Her fingers held the trigger lightly but firmly, and her breath fell into a controlled rhythm. The moment had come to execute the culmination of her performance. The shot cracked through the air, and the bullet struck the ninth plate perfectly. The metallic ping echoed across the range, a final punctuation to the demonstration of skill. Every target had been destroyed, every shot executed flawlessly, and every variable from wind to angle to recoil had been accounted for with meticulous precision. The observers exhaled collectively, as though releasing a held breath, and the ambient tension shifted into a tangible sense of awe. The performance had not been about showing off skill for the sake of ego. It had been about demonstrating mastery under extraordinary pressure. Sarah had neutralized the psychological tension, reclaimed authority in the presence of one of the fleet's most formidable officers, and executed technical skill at a level that few could ever hope to match. Every observer present understood the weight of what they had just witnessed. Admiral Hawthorne finally spoke, his voice measured, carrying the gravity of reluctant acknowledgement. "Commander Jensen," he said, "your performance today has been exceptional. The precision, the control, the composure under pressure, these are qualities few officers ever demonstrate. Few could have executed this sequence flawlessly, under observation, and fewer still with the same level of professionalism you have displayed." Sarah lowered the rifle fully, her expression calm and controlled. She allowed herself only a minimal exhale, a subtle acknowledgement of accomplishment. She had transformed a tense confrontation into a flawless demonstration of skill, discipline, and control. The observers around her could feel the shift in atmosphere. Intimidation had been replaced with respect, tension with admiration, and uncertainty with clarity. The surrounding officers, some seasoned veterans, some junior trainees, whispered softly to one another. They had witnessed a performance of rare technical excellence, but also a demonstration of mental resilience. Sarah's mastery had transcended the mechanics of marksmanship. She had created an environment where focus, calculation, and calm commanded the attention of all present. Her actions had spoken louder than words, conveying authority, competence, and confidence. As the final echoes of the ninth shot faded into the distance, the wind carried with it a sense of finality. Dust and fragments of shattered targets shimmered in the sunlight, marking the aftermath of flawless execution. Sarah's stance remained poised, rifle steady, eyes scanning the range with the same analytical intensity she had demonstrated throughout the sequence. Nothing had been left to chance. Every detail had been calculated and executed with precision. Even the most critical officers present found themselves impressed. Whispers of admiration grew louder, though muted by the decorum of the range. Hawthorne's dark eyes lingered on her, measuring, calculating, and cataloging. He had initiated the confrontation, hoping perhaps to test, intimidate, or assert dominance. Instead, he had been shown what mastery under pressure truly looked like: calm, precise, and unyielding in the face of challenge. Sarah's mind, ever disciplined, did not dwell on praise. Each shot had been a demonstration of calculation, control, and focus. Each target had reinforced her reputation as an officer capable of absolute precision under scrutiny. The exercise had begun as a challenge and evolved into a showcase of technical mastery and psychological resilience. She had proven her skill without arrogance, commanding respect through action rather than words. The subtle shifts in the environment, the wind, the shadows, the distant ocean, had been integrated seamlessly into her performance. Every shot was an example of adaptability and anticipation. The observers, both junior and senior, recognized that the exercise had revealed not just marksmanship, but the essence of leadership under pressure, patience, composure, and the ability to convert potential adversity into mastery. By the time Sarah lowered the rifle fully, the tension that had dominated the morning had transformed completely. Officers exchanged glances, whispers carrying admiration, acknowledgement, and even awe. The performance had been perfect, and its impact was immediate. She had demonstrated the extraordinary power of skill, focus, and composure in the presence of one of the most formidable officers in the fleet. As she stepped back slightly, allowing the rifle to rest comfortably against her shoulder, Sarah's mind cataloged the sequence of shots, the adjustments, and the environmental factors. Each one had been executed flawlessly, each moment a testament to preparation, discipline, and focus. The lesson was clear. True mastery, under observation and challenge, demanded more than raw skill. It required poise, resilience, and unshakable composure. The range was quiet now, the only sounds those of distant waves crashing against the cliffs and the soft rustle of flags in the morning breeze. Commander Sarah Jensen lowered the Barrett .50 caliber rifle fully, her stance still deliberate, her breathing controlled. The sequence of 9 perfect shots had concluded, and the impact of her performance hung heavily in the air. Officers, both junior and senior, shifted subtly, exchanging glances and whispers filled with astonishment. Even the most seasoned among them had rarely witnessed a demonstration of marksmanship and composure executed at such a level. Admiral Hawthorne remained in place, arms folded, dark eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, he said nothing. His reputation for intimidation had preceded him, a man known for pushing officers to their limits, testing not just skill, but psychological endurance. Sarah had faced that reputation head-on, reclaimed authority when he attempted to seize her rifle, and executed every shot flawlessly. Even he could not deny what he had just witnessed. Finally, Hawthorne spoke, his voice measured, carrying both authority and a trace of respect. "Commander Jensen," he said slowly, "today you have demonstrated what few officers are capable of achieving. Precision, composure, control each has been executed at an extraordinary level." His words, deliberate and calm, carried weight. Every officer present absorbed them, understanding that admiration from Hawthorne was both rare and significant. Sarah's expression remained neutral, controlled, almost serene. She did not allow herself to smile or react outwardly. A performance had never been about recognition. It had been about mastery. Her mind cataloged every detail: recoil adjustments, wind compensation, environmental variables, and psychological pressure. She had demonstrated not only technical skill, but resilience and leadership under intense scrutiny. Around her, whispers among officers grew. Some commented quietly on her ability to maintain focus under pressure. Others marveled at the sequence of 9 perfect shots. The energy in the facility had shifted completely. Where moments earlier there had been tension, intimidation, and uncertainty, now there was respect, admiration, and an almost palpable acknowledgement of her mastery. Hawthorne finally stepped forward, his dark uniform crisp in the morning sun. His movements were deliberate, measured, and authoritative, yet there was no trace of the previous intimidation. Instead, he approached with the deliberate pace of someone acknowledging a rare talent. "Commander Jensen," he said again, softer this time, "your actions have set a standard today. Few officers could perform under this level of scrutiny, and even fewer could demonstrate such calm, control, and precision. Sarah nodded subtly, acknowledging the comment without breaking composure. Her focus had been unwavering throughout the exercise, and now that it had concluded, she allowed herself the smallest of exhalations. Even under observation, she had maintained control, converted tension into performance, and demonstrated mastery in every sense. The exercise had tested not only marksmanship, but mental resilience, situational awareness, and authority under pressure. The surrounding officers began to relax, some moving slightly as the tension dissipated. Whispers became soft conversations, voices tinged with admiration. Many knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, a rare blend of technical skill, calm, and psychological resilience that would be remembered in fleet history. Sarah's reputation had been cemented, not through words or brash displays, but through flawless action under scrutiny. Hawthorne's eyes swept across the range, taking in the destroyed targets, the echoes of precision, and the calm presence of the commander who had dominated both weapon and environment. He approached Sarah, hand extended not in challenge, but in acknowledgement. "Well executed," he said quietly. Few officers could have demonstrated this level of precision, and fewer could have done so under pressure from me. Today, you've earned respect beyond rank and title. Sarah accepted the handshake with measured composure. Her grip was firm, confident, but restrained. She met his gaze directly, conveying acknowledgement without arrogance. This moment was more than recognition. It was validation that skill, composure, and discipline could overcome even the most formidable psychological challenges. Every officer observing felt the gravity of that acknowledgement, understanding that Sarah had redefined what it meant to lead under pressure. Junior officers nearby whispered in awe, analyzing every detail of her stance, grip, and mental focus. Many had been trained in marksmanship, but few had ever seen such mastery executed flawlessly under extreme observation. The performance had been a lesson in composure, calculation, and unyielding confidence. Observers recognized that the exercise had revealed not just skill with a weapon, but leadership and control under pressure. Sarah lowered the rifle completely, resting it against her shoulder. She allowed herself a brief survey of the destroyed targets, each one a testament to flawless execution. Dust and metal fragments shimmered in the sunlight, the remnants of precision that had required skill, calculation, and unflinching focus. Each shot had been deliberate, each movement measured, and each adjustment calculated with almost mechanical accuracy. Even as officers began to disperse, murmuring about the extraordinary performance, the energy on the range remained charged. Sarah's demonstration had left an indelible mark. She had reclaimed authority when challenged, executed perfect marksmanship, and maintained composure under intense observation. Every officer present understood the lesson: mastery of skill, composure under pressure, and decisive action in the face of intimidation defined true competence. Hawthorne remained momentarily at her side, his expression unreadable, yet undeniably tinged with respect. "Commander Jensen," he said finally, "consider this a benchmark. Today you've demonstrated the rare combination of skill, focus, and resilience that every officer should aspire to. You've set a standard, not just for marksmanship, but for leadership under scrutiny." Sarah's nod was subtle but firm. She did not speak further. Her performance, her composure, and her mastery spoke louder than any words ever could. The lesson had been delivered, the demonstration complete, and the respect earned. Officers absorbed the shift in dynamics immediately. Intimidation had been neutralized, authority had been reclaimed, and skill had been demonstrated beyond measure. The surrounding air was filled with a quiet sense of awe. Observers who had begun the exercise tense and uncertain now understood that true mastery involved far more than raw ability. It required discipline, calm, foresight, and the courage to act decisively under pressure. Sarah's execution of the 9-target sequence had transformed a simple marksmanship exercise into a lesson in leadership, focus, and psychological resilience. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the range, Sarah finally allowed herself the smallest of breaths, a quiet acknowledgement of the extraordinary feat she had achieved. Every officer present, from junior trainees to seasoned veterans, had witnessed a demonstration of skill and composure that would be remembered for years. Even Hawthorne's usual air of impervious authority had shifted, replaced by measured respect for the commander who had neutralized his intimidation and executed mastery flawlessly. Sarah adjusted the rifle one final time, resting it comfortably against her shoulder. Her mind cataloged the exercise in meticulous detail. Wind shifts, environmental variables, recoil absorption, mental focus, and tactical execution. Each had been accounted for perfectly, leaving no margin for error. Her performance had demonstrated not only marksmanship, but leadership, composure, and resilience under pressure, the qualities that define true mastery. As officers began to disperse, the murmur of admiration and analysis continued. Whispers circulated, recounting each perfect shot, each moment of composure, and the seamless reclamation of authority when challenged. Hawthorne's acknowledgement, though subtle, carried weight. Sarah had set a precedent that would echo through training exercises and evaluations for years to come. The sun was high above the naval training range now, casting bright light over the remnants of shattered steel targets and the scattered fragments of spent rounds. Commander Sarah Jensen stood tall, Barrett .50 caliber rifle resting comfortably against her shoulder, her posture precise and disciplined. Around her, officers moved subtly, exchanging whispers of admiration and disbelief. Today's exercise had transcended its original purpose. It had become a defining moment, a story that would be told and retold in fleet corridors for years. Sarah's actions had transformed a simple training scenario into a demonstration of mastery, authority, and leadership under pressure. Even now, hours after the last shot rang out, the echoes of her performance lingered in the minds of every observer. Junior officers replayed each perfect hit in their heads, analyzing the precision, composure, and adaptability required to execute such flawless marksmanship. Senior officers, seasoned veterans who had trained countless recruits, shared knowing glances. Few had ever seen a demonstration so precise, so commanding, and so psychologically transformative. Sarah had not only proven her skill with the rifle, she had set a new benchmark for excellence under pressure. Admiral Hawthorne lingered near the range, a figure of composed authority who had witnessed the extraordinary unfolding before him. He observed Sarah not as a subordinate, not as an opponent, but as a rare example of true mastery. The tension that had characterized their earlier confrontation had dissolved entirely, replaced by a quiet, measured respect. Every motion she had made, every shot she had fired, had demonstrated not only technical skill, but the mental fortitude and leadership required to excel in the face of direct scrutiny. He approached her deliberately, footsteps echoing softly against the concrete. "Commander Jensen," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience and authority. "Today you have redefined what it means to perform under pressure. You have demonstrated not only technical mastery, but composure, decisiveness, and resilience, the qualities that define a true leader." His gaze held a mix of respect and acknowledgement, rare in someone known for his unyielding demeanor. Sarah nodded subtly, accepting the acknowledgement with calm professionalism. She did not allow herself outward pride. Her focus had always been on execution, not recognition. Yet internally, she allowed herself a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had faced intimidation, reclaimed authority, and executed perfection under conditions that tested both skill and psychological resilience. The exercise had been more than a test. It had become a testament to discipline, focus, and leadership. Under pressure, the officers nearby began to gather, forming small clusters as whispers of admiration spread. They spoke softly of her flawless execution, the 9 targets destroyed with precise timing and impeccable calculation. Many marveled at how she had integrated environmental factors, wind shifts, target angles, vibrations, and recoil into each shot. Others noted the psychological aspect, how she had reclaimed authority when challenged by one of the fleet's most formidable officers, all without a trace of hesitation. Sarah had demonstrated that true mastery involved far more than technical skill alone. Even the junior officers, initially tense and uncertain, now viewed the display as a lesson in leadership and resilience. They had witnessed firsthand how composure, focus, and disciplined execution could transform an intimidating scenario into a display of control and expertise. Sarah's example illustrated that the ability to remain calm, adapt to evolving circumstances, and execute precisely under observation was as crucial to leadership as any rank or title. Hawthorne's expression remained stoic, yet tinged with a subtle respect that was unusual for him. He had challenged countless officers in his career, testing skill, courage, and mental fortitude. Yet few had met his challenge with the same blend of composure and precision that Sarah had displayed. He extended a hand once more, this time with no trace of confrontation. "You have set a new standard," he said, "one that all officers should aspire to reach. Your performance today will be remembered, and rightly so." Sarah accepted the handshake, firm and confident, but controlled, her eyes meeting his directly. She did not speak further. Her actions throughout the exercise had communicated more than words ever could. Every observer present understood that she had achieved something extraordinary. Her mastery of the rifle, combined with her mental fortitude, had neutralized intimidation and established her as an exemplar of precision, composure, and leadership under scrutiny. As the crowd began to disperse, conversations shifted from speculation to reflection. Officers discussed strategy, technique, and composure, analyzing each element of her performance. Sarah moved through the range calmly, cataloging details of her execution, the wind, angles, distances, and environmental variables, each observation reinforcing her methodical approach to mastery. Her mind, disciplined and precise, already considered how to apply lessons learned to future challenges. The impact of her demonstration extended beyond the range. Word would travel quickly through the fleet, and Sarah Jensen's reputation as a leader of skill, resilience, and composure would grow. Officers would recall this day for years, using it as a benchmark for performance under pressure. Her example would inspire trainees and veterans alike, illustrating that excellence is achieved not through intimidation or rank alone, but through focus, discipline, and unwavering control. Even as the exercise concluded, Sarah reflected on the significance of her actions. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle had been more than a weapon. It had been a tool of demonstration, a means of translating mental discipline into tangible results. Every shot had reinforced a principle she had long understood: mastery requires more than physical skill. It demands mental resilience, focus, and the ability to act decisively under scrutiny. Today, she had proven that principle beyond question. The shattered targets across the range bore silent testimony to her skill. Dust shimmered in the sunlight, fragments of metal scattered precisely where each shot had landed. Observers traced the trajectory of each bullet in memory, impressed not only by technical accuracy, but by the composure and discipline required to execute each shot flawlessly. Sarah had transformed an exercise designed to test skill into a comprehensive lesson in leadership, focus, and precision under pressure. Admiral Hawthorne, finally breaking his usual reserve, allowed a faint nod of acknowledgement, a gesture of respect that carried immense significance. Few officers ever earned such recognition from him, and even fewer had done so with such seamless combination of technical mastery and psychological composure. His acknowledgement validated not only Sarah's skill, but also her capacity to lead. Under conditions of intense scrutiny, as Sarah prepared to leave the range, her steps deliberate and controlled, officers continued to discuss the performance. She moved with purpose, every motion reflecting the discipline that had carried her through the exercise. Observers understood that they had witnessed more than marksmanship. They had witnessed the embodiment of focus, precision, and authority. Her performance would shape expectations, inspire future exercises, and redefine what it meant to excel under pressure. In the following days, recognition came from across the fleet. Officers recounted the exercise, highlighting not only the technical brilliance of each shot, but the composure, confidence, and decisiveness displayed throughout. Sarah Jensen's actions became a case study, illustrating how mastery is achieved not only through skill, but through the integration of mental resilience, preparation, and unwavering focus. Her example set a standard for excellence that would influence training, evaluation, and leadership for years to come. Hawthorne himself referenced the exercise in subsequent briefings, praising her performance as exemplary. He emphasized that mastery was more than technical skill. It was about maintaining composure under scrutiny, reclaiming authority when challenged, and executing flawlessly in every detail. Sarah's demonstration became an educational touchstone, a benchmark for both officers and trainees across the fleet. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the range, Sarah finally allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection. The exercise had tested her in every way, technically, psychologically, and tactically. She had faced intimidation, neutralized it, and transformed tension into flawless execution. Her performance had not only demonstrated mastery, but had also set a legacy that true leadership, precision, and excellence are achieved through composure, discipline, and unwavering focus. Sarah Jensen walked from the range, Barrett rifle secure, her mind cataloging lessons learned and victories achieved. The day's exercise was complete, but its impact would ripple through the fleet for years. Every officer who had witnessed it carried a memory of precision, composure, and mastery. Hawthorne's acknowledgement, the respect of peers, and the transformed atmosphere on the range cemented her legacy. The story of the 9 perfect shots, executed under scrutiny and pressure, would become legend, a testament to skill, focus, and resilience. Sarah had demonstrated that true mastery is more than ability. It is the integration of discipline, mental fortitude, and decisive action. The legacy she left on the range that day would inspire generations of officers, a shining example of what it means to lead, execute, and excel under the highest levels of challenge.